Dwight Mitchell from New Jersey via Minnesota. You get over here a lot. Dwight, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
And the reason I'm having you on the show, and I've covered you in a number of press conferences. I played your videos, talked about some of your situation, but I wanted to get you on the show so people can hear from you and go a little bit deeper into your situation. But your children were taken from you by CPS, Child Protection Services, Minnesota.
Right.
And you're from New Jersey, all right? And it took you 22 months to get all of them back.
That's correct.
So what in the world happened?
Well, I'm a management consultant, so I travel all over the world doing business process reengineering and change management. I happen to be in Minnesota working for CHS, which is a top 60 organization. So I was brought in from New Jersey to do a 3-year, $22 million project for CHS.
Okay.
So
you were heading up that project.
I was heading up there. I was the program manager, and I had a number of project managers. We were doing 15 sites around the world, and I was leading that effort.
Okay.
So on long projects such as this, I will bring in a team of project managers and management consultants, and then I will also bring my family with me because I know it's going to be a long-term
3 years.
project. Correct. So
that'd be a lot of traveling back and forth.
A lot of traveling back and forth. And when you're starting up a project, I'll do that. But once things solidify, I'll find a house. So I rented a house in Apple Valley, and it was a nice house, nice community, quiet.
Right.
You know. And so I brought my family out, and we were living a normal life. My kids were going to school. I was going to CHS daily and traveling around for that, going back and forth between my office in New Jersey and here. I call it a reverse commute, so to speak.
Sure.
You know, and my middle son at the time just wasn't behaving. I guess he had sort of taken it upon himself to say, I don't have to listen to you, Dad.
Okay. Happens to a lot of kids.
I suppose it does.
You know, I mean, what kid doesn't kind of, you know, do I want to listen to my parents? You know, how far can I push it? Right. You know, and can I go as far as saying I don't want to listen?
Right.
And parents, you know this happens all the time. So.
Well, it had gotten so, you know, so difficult with Xander is that I had said to him he wouldn't do his chores, and I just said, well, if you don't want to do your chores, you know, I'm not going to give you your allowance, and if, you know, so you won't be able to do anything. And so we were talking about that, and I said, so in other words, you're telling me that if I don't tell you to do your chores, you're not going to do them? He says, pretty much. I mean, he looked at me right now and said that, and I just said, wow. I said, well, if that's the way you feel, on top of that, I said, you know, there's no Xbox, you know, there's no PlayStation.
Sure.
That's going away. So I guess in retaliation, he decides, well, I'm not going to do anything in school. So I'm thinking he's doing his homework every day, and the teacher calls me to school, and she says, well, he hasn't done any work in the last 6 weeks. You know, so he hadn't done any of his homework or anything of that nature. So there were a number of things going on in the household. And so it finally came to a head. And you know, after the talking and the timeout and, you know, the taking away of his toys and the Xbox and all of these things, I said, well, you know, I have one last resort. You know? And so he was 10 years old at the time. And so I took it upon myself to use what I thought was, you know, ordinary corporal punishment. I give him a bottom spanking that, you know, temporary, you know, pain.
And it's legal.
And it's legal.
Right.
So what was interesting is that Minnesota says that you are allowed to spank your children. So it's
unless you get into the courts.
Unless you get into the courts.
And then all of a sudden that law is meaningless.
It's totally meaningless.
It's totally subjective to the judge.
That is correct. Well, no, not even to the judge, to the social worker.
Okay.
It's even at a low. The bar is so low, and I was surprised. I'm like, well, how can you say it's legal? And they actually said to me, oh, it's legal as long as you don't cause any pain. And
well, that's not the law.
Well, when you look at the statutes, when you look at the statutes, I was shocked. So when you start going through the statutes, they have manipulated the statutes in such a way, and when I say they, I'm talking about DHS, Department of Human Services, because they get into these sessions, and I'll speak to that in a few minutes, because I was going to the task force for child prevention. I was speaking before the committee, so I was speaking to the senators and the representatives.
Oh.
I was trying to understand what was going on, because I didn't feel that the statutes were written correctly. I'm like, how can you say it's legal to do something on one hand and then charge a parent in the other? So then when I started looking at the statutes, the statutes are crafted that anything less than substantial bodily harm is considered malicious punishment. And then, so well, what's the definition of that? Well, anything that causes an injury. What's the definition of injury? Well, anything that causes pain or the threat of pain. So
the threat of pain.
The threat of pain. So they were trying to charge me with terroristic threats, because I had told my son that if you get expelled from school, that I'm going to give you a spanking, And they said, well, you can't say that to a child. I said, well, then what's going to stop him from doing whatever he wants to do, or getting expelled from school? And I said, I'm trying to make my son a productive member of society. I said, he needs to go to school, he needs to go get education, he needs to respect authority. I said, what, do I wait till he's 18 years old and let a police officer hit him upside the head with a billy club and say, you need to respect authority? So there was this.
But did they give you, well, do this instead, or did they give you any recommendations as to how to fix the problem?
Oh, talking in timeout.
But you were doing that.
I know. And I said, and I asked him, I said, so what else was I supposed to do? I said, my own son told you that, his Xbox had been taken away and he had been given, extra schoolwork. So I went to Barnes and Nobles and bought all these extra books, and I said, this is what you're going to be doing. I said, you're not going to just be sitting around idle, so you're going to be doing extra schoolwork since you aren't doing your work in school and you're behind. So I said, you need to catch up now.
Okay.
And they couldn't give me an answer.
Sure.
They said, well, have you tried therapy? And I'm like, well, that's $250 an hour. I said, are you going to pay for therapy at $250 an hour? I said, there's nothing wrong with my son. I said, he's just
doing what kids do.
Kids do,
But doing what parents do, healthy parents,
right?
When they recognize the problems, that isn't okay for the state.
But what's really interesting now, as it relates to children, and the way all the children are behaving in the United States, is that you sit here, the teachers say we can't do anything. The teachers are afraid of the principals.
Right.
The principals are afraid of the superintendent.
Right.
The superintendent is afraid of the school board. The school board is afraid of the parents, and the children aren't afraid of anyone.
Right.
So, they're sitting here like, well, what are you going to do to me?
Yeah.
You can't do anything to me. I received from the school a listing of things that I could not do as a parent. It says you cannot send your child to bed without dinner as punishment. You cannot have him stand in the corner. You cannot, degrade him. You cannot spank him. So they gave me a list of things I could do. And I said, well, then how do you expect me to get my child to listen to me? And that is a key problem that is going on in society right now. There's this 30-year-old social experiment that's been going on with, there's no discipline. We've taken discipline completely out of our society. And I tell everyone, I says, go back 30 years ago. And I said, if you go back 30 years ago, we didn't have Columbine. We didn't have, all of the things that we've sort of taken for granted now that have become normalized. I said, these things weren't going on. I said, what has changed? I said, the only thing that has changed in our society is we've completely taken discipline out of our society. So that's, what I went through.
Yeah, so you disciplined your child, and then what happened? How did the wrath of the state come down upon you?
The police actually came and took the 3 children out of my house.
Well, how'd they find out about you spanking your child?
My middle child told the babysitter, and he told the babysitter that his mother said, and when I said his mother, his original mother, I was remarried.
Okay.
So his biological mother said that if I ever spanked him, to call the police.
Okay.
So this was the first time he got spanked. He told the babysitter, who in turn did exactly what he said, and my former wife said. So the police came to the house, and they took all the children to the police station, and social services met them at the police station, and they said, we're taking your children and putting them in foster care. That exact same
Did
night.
they have a warrant?
They did not have a warrant.
How did they come in the house?
They just came in. It was kind of interesting because I went to court about that because they were taking pictures and examining the house. I said, well, no one gave you permission to do that. And so when I went to court for that, the judge actually said, did you tell them to leave? And I'm like, no, they said they were coming in. So the judge said, well, you never told them to leave. I said, well, they didn't ask. They said what they were doing. He says, well, then you gave them permission because you never told them to leave.
Who was this judge?
I'd have to go look at the records.
I always like the names of judges.
I can get it for you because
Yeah,
I have the
want it.
court transcript, so I'll give it to you. But
Yeah.
it was the most interesting thing I had ever heard.
You were in Dakota County?
Dakota County. Yes,
Dakota
I was.
County, folks. Have we heard of that name before or on this show? How bad it is out there? Yeah, we have. Okay. It's a sideline. There's a lot of history with Dakota County and Ramsey County, a number of counties, but that's one that comes up that is really messing up big time. First Judicial District.
I don't doubt it because they didn't do anything as prescribed by state statutes or the law. So there's a timeline in a child protection proceeding. So there's a number of things that are supposed to be done. And in my particular case, Dakota County did not follow one of the timelines. They did not do anything that they were supposed to do. So when a child is removed from the home, you're supposed to have what is known as an emergency hearing before the court in 72 hours, which is 3 days. I didn't get mine till 10 days after my children were removed.
And did the court or the Child Protection Services say why it waited that long?
Well, they just asked. It was kind of interesting because I didn't know that at the time. I found this out later on. They just said, Your Honor, we'd like the hearing on this day. And the judge said, okay. It was literally, and I have the letter. So it's a letter where they asked the court that we'd like to have.
Did you have any say in that?
I did not.
They just granted it anyway?
That is correct.
Yeah, well, that's not the first time we've heard of that from Dakota County, so.
Well, what makes my case very, very unique is that from the beginning, I thought that the entire proceedings were unconstitutional, and I didn't feel that things were being done proper. So about 2 months into my case, I asked for all of my discovery, meaning I had said, start sending me all of the court records.
Okay.
And so every few months, I would say, is there any additional discovery? So at the end of my case, I had over 600 pages of discovery from Dakota County. So unlike most citizens who go through this ringer, well, I had all the documentation that related to my case.
Okay. Now, Dakota's famous for not giving documentation.
That's correct.
Did you have a problem?
I did not,
Okay.
and it's probably because of their arrogance, or they thought that, so what, you want your paperwork? Here you go. What are you going to do?
Right. All right.
And so there was this arrogance that we can do whatever we want to do. And so I would say things to them, and they would just like, I don't care. We're going to do exactly what we want to do. And so they actually did that for about 22 months. And so when I finally had my say in court, which was 22 months later.
It took you 22 months to get your say in court?
It took 22 months to get a hearing.
You didn't even have your 10-day? Did you have your...
I had the 10-day.
Okay.
And the judge ruled in their favor, because what most people don't realize is that CPS does not have to prove that you did anything wrong. They just have to make allegations.
Right.
And technically, they have 90 days to put their case together and present it to the court and say, well, here are the facts. Here's the evidence.
In 10 days, it's the allegations they put together.
That is correct.
Don't have to have any evidence, any foundation to their evidence or anything.
Just a prima facie.
Okay. And then after 10 days, then they're supposed to have 90 days for you to get into court.
That is correct. For them to compile the evidence, to put a case against you, to tell the judge, why your children are in need of protection or services, or they're supposed to return the children to you.
Okay. So no notice of a hearing in 90 days?
No.
or anything, so,
They kept asking for an extension after extension after
so
extension.
you had court dates scheduled?
I went to court every month for 22 months for a hearing, you know, and it was always some reason why we couldn't have it. And
Now, was this before a different judge or the same judge that denied the 72-hour hearing?
well, it's before a different judge, and this is one of the things that I thought. This is a major breakdown in Dakota County. I'm not sure it is in other counties. Certain members of our organization have said they had the same judge throughout the entire proceeding. I had a different judge every time I went. So it was this rotating schedule. And what they don't do is they don't have a checklist of saying, well, what is due now? So the prior judge would order something. We'd come to court. There'd be another judge, and they wouldn't do something. For example, in my case, I never got a reunification plan. So there were 22 months, no reunification.
And they're supposed to.
And they're supposed to. And the judge ordered it multiple times. On 3 occasions, I have court orders where he said, you will give this man a reunification plan and you will, you know, put his son back in the household.
So the reunification plan is done by Child Protection Services?
That is correct. And the guardian ad litem.
And the guardian, and they did nothing?
They did nothing. Never wrote one up. In July of 2014, the judge was so upset that he said, I expect a reunification plan in this chambers in the next 30 days. I expect it to be signed by Mr. Mitchell, the foster parent, social worker, the guardian ad litem, and Mr. Mitchell's son.
Okay.
30 days later, we go to court. Well,
Same judge?
different judge. No reunification plan.
See, and you're bringing up one of the strategies, because I mean, this is Dakota County, a lot of counties, but I've seen this in Dakota County. A judge will do the right thing, say everything right, but the intention is to throw you off, think, okay, things are going to happen. The intention is to throw you off, and behind the scenes, they're telling people, leave it alone, you know, and because, well, I'll just get another judge in here, you know, and it's that, it's kind of a cat and mouse game that goes on. So they'll put something, and they'll say something from the bench. They may even put it in order, but what we see a lot of times, they change their orders from what they've said on the bench. And so the whole purpose is what one person told me, or two people actually. The whole purpose is to keep you coming back so you give in. And so you just drag it out, and then finally you say, all right, I'm done. You know, and every month you got to come back.
Every month I was back for 22 months. And so what ended up happening, and I suppose maybe I was the wrong person to pick on, because I played a lot of sports growing up, and so I was very competitive.
Sure.
I was the 97 AMA National Motorcycle Road Racing Champion.
Okay.
So I've raced all over the world. I've raced the Isle of Man TT races 3 times. I was a competitive fencer in foil. I won the silver medal in the New Jersey Olympics, was going for the national team. So,
well, now you know what the courts will say about you. You have delusions of grandeur.
maybe they will, you know.
We've had that happen. Guy gives us work history.
But
and then they throw him in a psych ward. I had to go in there and say, these are true. You're throwing him in a psych ward for true things.
That's right.
But anyway, I digress. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have do that. But here's the next. So you're an athlete. You understand perseverance.
Yes.
You understand strategy. You understand sticking to it.
Well,
you know,
I
tomorrow's
wasn't
a
giving
different
up.
day.
Wasn't giving up. And so what was very, very interesting is that, so this went on until November. And so in November, they come to court and they ask the judge, well, Your Honor, the reunification plan isn't working. We'd like to stop the reunification plan. And I'm like,
Wait.
What reunification plan? I've never gotten a reunification plan.
Oh my goodness.
And so the judge grants them permission to stop the reunification efforts. But I'm like, Your Honor, there were never any reunification efforts. Now, here's the most
And
interesting
this is a different
part.
judge?
Different judge. Now, the reunification plan, along with the case plan, are supposed to be submitted to the court. The case plan is what needs to happen in order for the child to come back into the home. The reunification plan is what therapy or what additional things are, do we need to make sure, transpires to get that child back into the home. Well, in my case, the case plan was never written and never submitted to the court. So that was supposed to happen in 30 days. There was never a case plan. There was never a unification plan. So I'm sitting here going like judge after judge after judge for 22 months. Never saw a case plan, never saw a reunification plan, and every single thing that CPS said or recommended, the judge granted verbatim. I mean, it was like if you look at their requests and recommendations and you look at the judge's order, it was like CPS was running the courtroom,
right,
instead of the judge.
Right.
And no matter what objection we made, it was just like, noted. All right, CPS, you can have what you want. Noted. Okay, CPS, you can have what you want. It was not one of our objections were upheld, not one.
Wow. So the net result of all this is you're fighting this battle, and then why did you get your kids back in 22 months? Since nothing was working. Why didn't they keep your kids forever? Because they had you. I mean, everything they wanted to do was happening. What happened?
Well, what ended up happening is that I became very frustrated with my attorney. I let my attorney go for ineffective counsel. And I said, well, I'm paying you. I had one of the top law firms in Minnesota. Okay. It was Walling, Berg & Diebling.
Okay.
And I'm paying an exorbitant amount of money every single month, and nothing was happening. So I let them go for ineffective counsel. And I decided to proceed pro se.
Okay.
So I had all of my discovery. I went through all 600 pages of discovery. I looked at what was being said. I looked at what was actually happening in actuality. I looked at their own case notes. And I guess they didn't expect someone to do that or to actually go to that level of detail. So I filed 3 motions with the court. I filed a motion to dismiss. I filed a motion to vacate all previous orders, and I filed a motion to enforce my New Jersey court orders, my custody court orders. And then I wrote a memorandum of law.
Well, now, did your attorneys do any of that before?
No, they did not. No.
Oh, wow.
No. Well,
a motion to dismiss is like automatic.
Well,
I mean, that's
it's not automatic.
The first thing.
So,
well, yeah.
No. What you're saying is you would think it would be easy.
I'm saying that's the kind of one of the first things you're supposed to do. It's a little harder in family court, but mostly civil matters. Anyway,
well, what I was trying to say, no. You're right, Tim. What I was trying to say to you, which even perplexed me, which I didn't understand, you only have until the admit-deny hearing to file a motion to dismiss in family court.
You didn't get one.
Well, no, I got an admit-deny hearing, but what happens is it happens anywhere between 3 and 7 days, right? So it's a separate hearing, and they can combine them with the emergency hearing.
Sure.
So what ends up happening for most people is that if you have your admit-deny hearing within 7 days of the whole proceeding starting, you're still trying to find a lawyer in the first 7 days.
Right.
You get a lawyer, you get representation, you go to court, you have passed your timeline to file your motion to dismiss.
Which, you bring up an interesting thing there, because you go down one goes down the legislature and people are saying, hey, my kids are taken away, we need to get it done quickly.
Right.
But they don't realize that that's also can work against you.
Right.
Because you got to find somebody to help you through that system right away, and you better have some money. You better have $5 to $10 grand to put down on the spot.
Right.
And there's no public defender for these.
No.
Because it's not a crime.
No. It's all
and you get your children taken away, and it's over before it even started.
It is.
So anyway, finish.
So I ended up, I filed this, and so in my memorandum of law, I did a chronology of everything that was supposed to take place and everything that happened. And I submitted 84 pages of Dakota County official documentation. And I put together a matrix. And I said, here's the state statute, here's the timeline, here's what was supposed to happen, and here's what actually happened. And then here's what social services said. And so when I put all this together, I go to court, I have my hearing, the judge looks at my memorandum of law, and so while we're having the hearing, the judge says, Mr. Mitchell, you did this pro se? And I said, yes, I did. She says, well, I'm very well briefed, she said.
Okay.
She said, you did a very, very good job on this. And I said, thank you, Your Honor. I said, I'm just stating the facts. And so what was fascinating is that nothing in my memorandum was contradicted by social services.
Okay.
They said nothing. They were silent.
Wow.
And so the judge said, I need to look at all this. She says, I'm going to set this aside for 30 days. She said, I need you to come back in 30 days, and I'll have my ruling at that time.
No, that had to be scary. Another 30 days.
It was scary, but I was confident because I know
and this
I
was
had
a Dakota County judge?
Yes, and it was Judge Erica McDonald.
Okay,
and so,
who's now a U.S. attorney?
Yes, yes,
okay.
she is.
All right,
so,
from Minnesota.
So she looked at everything, and so we come to court in 30 days. Well, who's in court but my son, who I hadn't seen in 22 months? And before court started, the judge said, are there any motions or does the county want to say anything before we get started? And the county said, well, Your Honor, we'd like to withdraw our motion for termination of parental rights. We'd like to dismiss all charges against Mr. Mitchell, and we're going to return his son to him, and his son is in the courtroom today, and we're giving him back his son. And I said, wait. The judge needs to rule on my 3 motions. And the judge says, well, they're moot now. You have your son back.
Oh, my goodness.
So there's no reason for me to rule,
That's a scam.
And so...
She was McDonald was part of Erica McDonald was part of that scam, in my book.
I can't speak to it because if you look at the transcripts, I asked her 3 times. I says, no, Your Honor. I said, I need a ruling. I said, I have been, labeled as a child abuser. You have put me in your state record, so I'm in your database now, based upon these allegations. What most people don't realize, and completely took me by storm, is I'm put in the state database. Every single person who has an allegation against them is put into the state database before they even have a trial, within the first 2 weeks, just from a reporting. So I was sitting here saying, well, who did the assessment? Oh, the social worker. Well, how can she, have a finding before we even go into court? The judge hasn't looked at it. The judge hasn't looked at any evidence. So you are put into the state's database purely based upon allegations that are unsubstantiated by the social worker. And this goes on every single day, and it's been going on. Well, this happened to me in 2014, and it's still going on today in 2018. So my kid, that's how I got my kids back, but it was only my own tenacity, my own fortitude. And I'm like, I'm tired of this. I'm not messing with your legal system. I read what I'm able to do, I put it together, and I got my kids back. So,
which is rare.
It's rare.
It's rare.
It's rare because most people give in. They will submit.
Yeah, and when their lawyer tells them, this is what has to happen, and this is the way it happens, and most people don't go beyond that.
Well, they think their lawyers are telling them the truth, and so what I've been telling everyone in our group and organization is that the best thing you can do for the first 90 days is to keep your mouth shut. And I said, I'm not being facetious. No. I'm like, do not sign any of their documents. I said, I can show you the state statutes and the DHS manual where they say you do not have to cooperate with DHS. They have to do their own assessment. They trick people and force them. If you don't do this, you won't get your kids back. Well, that's not what the law says, and that's not what the state statute says. It says the social worker is entitled to do an investigation. The parents do not have to help. You do not have to sign any medical records or anything of that nature. The only thing you have to do is allow them if they want to look at your child's medical records, well, the court can give them permission to do that. You don't have to give them permission to do that.
Right.
So I tell everyone, this is an adversarial relationship. Think of yourself, that's the prosecutor, you're the defense. In what legal court system, does the defense go and help the prosecutor and say, well, let me give you all this information, Mr. Prosecutor, to use however you want to see fit.
Oh, but it's civil, so it's not but it is a prosecution.
Right, it is. And there's a conflict of interest. You can't say that the same person who's in charge of prosecuting you for alleged abuse is the same person who's in charge of reunifying you. I mean, their goal, I took the child, I'm taking your child. Why should I, play a contradictory role and say, now I'm going to help you, get your child back?
Right.
No, you can't do both. And so that inherently creates an issue within the system. And this is why so many parents are having problems now, because the social worker will say, oh, well, I'm going to, do this for you and help you get your child back. And I was the same victim. So I believed the social worker. After the initial investigation was done, the social worker said, here's what we're going to do. And I did everything he said. And then after I got my discovery, I started seeing what was going on behind the background. And he was actually lying to me. He was lying to me, he was lying to my son, and I have it documented. He was telling my son that I abandoned him, that I didn't want him.
Oh, wow.
He was telling me,
abuse.
Your son doesn't want to go
abuse.
home. I can tell him, I will send you the documents.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, I don't have to send them to you. Just go online, look at the complaint I filed, and it's in the complaint. If you go to my website, or if you go to our Facebook page, it's there. So anybody that wants to look at it, don't believe me. Every single document was filed with my federal complaint.
Wow. Okay. I'm in a dilemma right now.
Sorry.
This history of all this is totally fascinating. We can finish out the whole show going over more history and stuff like that. But I think we need to switch it, because you started an organization, and we got to get this out. I mean, people, you want to know about this organization, you may need help. There's a lot to know, but so you started an organization because of what you went through. What can you tell us about your organization? What's the name?
Well, the name of the organization is Stop CPS from Legally Kidnapping Children. And I started the organization sort of as therapy initially, because I went through a lot, and I wanted to see, was I the only one going through this?
Right.
And then I started talking to people, and I found out other people were going through the same thing. And then at that time, we had about 250 members, and we were talking about what they went through, and I was sharing my experience. And then I decided to go to the next step and to enlarge the organization, and I created an association. And the goal was to try and affect change. So that was our ultimate goal.
We got about 12, 13 minutes left for you to tell the rest of what you want to tell. So I'm just giving you a warning. It goes fast here, I realize that. So do you have a mission statement? What are your goals?
We do. We have a national litigation strategy going on right now. So we filed a federal lawsuit in Minnesota a few months ago. We feel that the state statutes are unconstitutional. They're vague and overbroad, and it allows Child Protection Services to unnecessarily separate children from their family, which creates a lifelong trauma, as evidenced by what's going on with the Mexican border incident, and all the doctors and everyone is talking about, what
separation from the illegal immigrants, but just separation of parent and child, and they're screaming about it. But everyone that's screaming about this, and people you need to know, every person that's screaming is saying it's okay to do it to an American citizen and to an American family.
That's correct. They
set up a system to do that.
That is correct, and it's systematic, and it's a self-preserving system. It's an ecosystem that is self-protecting. 465,000 children were taken as of the last reporting. Came out in October of 2017. 29
by Child Protection
Services nationally. $29.1 billion was spent. If you go to my website, I have links to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, their annual reporting. I went back to 1999, and so I added it up, and I said, and I just did 10 years, You know, I said, well, I don't need to go back to 1990. I'll just do the last 10 years. And it was like over $290 billion. So it's a machine now.
Right.
And so it's a self-protecting machine. And so the doctors, the judges, the lawyers, the guardian ad litems, if you go look at the Title IV Social Security Act and what the money can be spent on,
correct,
everyone is being paid. So it's, you know, people talk about money. I'm like, people, don't listen to me. Go to my website, go to the DHS website, look at what's out there. So it's readily available. No one knows about it, and it's one of these, you know, closely guarded secrets. So I've sort of opened up Pandora's box.
Right. Well, in Minnesota, I know our legislators know about that. They know about the money. They know about the system. The judges know about it. The people in power know about it because they perpetuate the machine. Sure. There are some legislators fighting, and you mentioned you've talked to some legislators. Do you care to say who's kind of helping you, or is there legislation out there at all that's?
Well, you know, it's a slow process right now, and I'm
sure
I'm not going to really talk about legislatures.
Okay.
I'm more because I tried that route,
uh-huh,
and that after 2 years of trying to talk to them, I said that's not going to work.
Okay.
I said, you know, I have to go the federal route, and that's why I went the federal route, and that's why we put in this lawsuit, because after 2 years of looking at the legislation, they actually made it worse instead of better.
Right.
More children were taken in the last 2 and 3 years that were taken in subsequent years. So Minnesota is completely out of control now.
Wow.
As it relates to taking care of children. And what's even more outrageous is that the parents don't get an attorney. The children don't get an attorney unless they're over 10 years old, and the majority of children are under 10 years old that CPS has in their custody, and you don't get a jury trial for a termination of parental rights. So a thief who steals a pack of chewing gum is entitled to an evidentiary hearing, exculpatory information has to be provided by the prosecutor, and they get a jury trial for stealing a pack of gum.
Right.
You get your child taken forever, and you get none of this. So that is,
it's wrong. It's immoral. It's outrageous.
That's correct.
But they in my understanding, this was perfected through the family law system, and then they keep transferring and find out what works and what people can't resist, and then they build that into other systems.
Well, it's Einstein's, you know, if you look at it, you know, Einstein was a brilliant person, but one of the things he gave us is the definition of insanity. It's like to keep doing the same things again and again, expecting different results. So, you know, everyone talks about it. It's talked about in the U.S. Congress. It's talked about in all the states. And they keep doing the same thing. They understand what's wrong.
Right.
And they expect something to change. Well, it's not going to change. Social services needs to be abolished in its current form. It needs to go away, and it needs to be completely reorganized and restructured. But what's that going to do? That whole ecosystem, that $29, $30 billion a year, well, I actually think it's more, but I'm only using their reports. Well, it all goes away. And everybody's like, oh, what are you going to do? I says, it doesn't need to go away. You need to transfer it. You need to go to the preventive side. You need to look at foster care, and if you look at the statistics for foster care, they're abysmal. The children that are going into foster care are just horrible. Oh my goodness, I didn't mean to have that on.
I didn't warn you. My fault. I usually mention it.
I usually turn it off. I apologize.
No, that's all right.
So, you know, if you look at
what would a show be without it? So.
At least one, right? So, back to the foster care statistics, because I think it's very, very important that everyone knows and understands this, is that 50% of the children that age out of foster care at 18 don't have a high school diploma. 3% of the children in foster care go to college. Within the first year, 60% of the children who age out or are 18 in foster care are either dead or in jail.
Wow.
20% of the children that age out are automatically homeless the minute they age out. They have nowhere to go and no home.
Because foster care doesn't pay the families anymore?
Doesn't pay the families anymore. You're 18, you gotta make do. Now, mind you, no education, and you can't go to college. So what are you supposed to do? So then you go to the penal system, right? 75% of the people in the penal system were future foster children. 85% of the inmates on death row were future foster children. Our foster care system has failed our country miserably. And these statistics are not new. I can go back, you can look on my website. This is a 10-year span. It was going on for the last 20 and no one is doing anything about it. So it's okay for us to harm, damage, traumatize, and destroy our own children.
Right.
But 11,000 immigrants. Oh, no. Oh, oh my goodness. Well, all children are priceless. All children are sacred. In the last 10 years, I added up all of the children that were taken and put into foster care. It was over 2 million children went into foster care. So we have effectively, as a nation, destroyed 2 million children. If only 3% went to college and became effective members of our society out of 2 million children. That speaks volumes. So that's why I'm on this crusade, Tim.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned you have a federal lawsuit. Is there a hearing coming? Has that been scheduled yet, a hearing? Or?
Yes. The first hearing has been scheduled for October 3rd. The wheels of justice move slowly. We filed
Some of
a
it was
complaint.
reasoned, but not what you went through in Dakota County. But
No.
people need to have a chance to answer
That's correct.
and
so
get the complaints
county
out.
has it, because
So-
we have a motion against, our complaints against both the county and the state. So the state has to answer, the county has to answer, we have to respond, they get to counter respond, and there's like days, but it's like 20 days between each. So people are like, well, what's going on? I'm like, well, guys, it takes a long time because each side has to go back and forth, but we do have a date.
Okay. And that could be potentially continued, but less likely in federal
Less
court.
likely. I don't think it
They
will
don't
be.
play around so much
No.
there. However, you see that happen at sometimes, but, okay. You have some slides.
Oh.
Did we get those?
I did give them the slides.
Okay. So what's this one about here? Can you see on the TV?
Oh, that's right. We started a fundraiser a couple of days ago. So what we're trying to do, as part of our mission statement, we want to have all the children represented. So our fundraiser is for pro bono attorneys, family counseling, trauma treatment. And so we are trying to expand to all 50 states. We want offices. We want a 1-800 call line. And our fundraiser will allow us to do this. So it's all laid out on the website. The fundraiser's on Facebook, so we don't get charged any fees, or you can just donate on our website to help save a traumatized child.
Okay. Let's go to the next graphic here.
That was the statistics. That talks about the 437,465 children that were removed. That's on my website also. So anybody that wants to see those statistics and the government sites, just go look at that on our website.
Okay. Next slide.
That is our logo that's on our Facebook page. So we have a Facebook fan page and we have a group page. So the group page is for victims. We currently have 3,700 members. So we went from 250 to 3,700 in about 90 days.
Wow.
And it's growing. We get about 25 or plus people a day asking to join. So the word is spreading like wildfire. And so there's a lot of victims out there who need help.
I noticed you mentioned family preservation first. I mean,
That's correct.
That's a big thing, but you've stated why, because you get kids in the foster care system, but that's your major thing.
Well, all the studies will show you that the children, are faring far worse in the foster care system than the whole reason they were taken out of the household in the first place. So the emphasis needs to be put on the front in prevention rather than on the backside, because the backside is failing miserably.
Okay. Let's go to the next slide. This is your logo.
This is our logo.
Okay.
And so I show you both the Facebook and Twitter symbol. If you go to the @CPS LKC on either Facebook or Twitter, that will take you to our page.
Okay.
And then our website is the same. It's our initials. It's scpslck.org.
So the main thing you're trying to do with your organization is what?
We are trying to reunite. We call it rescuing. We're trying to rescue the children from the clutches of CPS and reunite them with their families. And we're also trying to prevent the separation. So we're assisting parents when CPS gets involved. We're saying, here's what you need to do, and we'd like to be able to present them with counsel that understands what needs to happen and who's not just trying to bill the client or the defense lawyers that are, that are appointed by the court that have no incentive to fight for a client's civil rights.
Okay. Dwight, the hour's up.
Wow, that
Goes
was
fast, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
I really appreciate you being on the show today, Dwight Mitchell. And folks, I just want you to know, remember this. If you don't stand up for other people's liberties, who's going to stand up for yours?
That's correct.
And thank Dwight for standing up for his, because sometimes people won't do that for you. And also, good men don't do nothing. And Dwight, you're a good man because you're doing something about this.
Thank you.
So,
thank you.
Appreciate that. All right. We'll be back next week. So please tune in. God bless. Good night.